Okay, we are live. Welcome back to the Hill of Roses, where we come once again to celebrate the best contributors to our independent policy movement for progress to bring power to the people. With us today is Lawrence Hamm. He's a U.S. Senate candidate in my home state of New Jersey. Lawrence, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you know what? I this past weekend had finally got around to being able to cast my ballot today, and I'm so glad I got to speak with you today because, frankly, you were the person who I chose to vote for over Cory Booker. But before we go into the whole reason why you wanted to run and what your policy platform is and how you want to enact this
Well,
change that
thank
we
you.
so desperately
Thank
need,
you.
I'd love to,
That's good to know. Thank
yeah, you're very welcome. I wanted to hear a little bit more about yourself, Lawrence. What have you been doing before you decided to run for office and or are still doing today? Seems like he is having some connection issues currently. So we'll see if he can rejoin us currently. So, you know what? Well, while he's trying to figure out that connectivity issue, I'm going to just take a moment to figure this out. The reason why I wanted to support Lawrence, and I'll tell that now before he comes back and tries to reconnect to the stream, is frankly because, first and foremost, one of the biggest policies that we have here is a universal basic income. And Lawrence has adopted a universal basic income into his platform. Second is universal health care. Big thing. And then finally, we need someone who's going to actually act aggressively on climate change. So, you know what? Let's get back to it. Hey, Lawrence.
you. Hey, got a bad connection. I was going to a place where I thought
Yeah.
we'd have a good connection. All right. So you asked me what I was doing before I ran
That's
for the
correct.
Senate.
And you know what? Yeah, exactly. And you know what? The bad connectivity is because you're all over the state right now trying to campaign in these final days. You got the election June 7th. So,
Oh yeah.
can you let us know what has been the driver for you before you decided to run for office and what inspired you to get into this race?
Well, before I decided to run for office, I've been the chairman of the People's Organization for Progress in Newark, and for 38 years, PO for racial, social, economic justice, and peace. And I've been involved in a plethora of activities related to every issue that affects working people and poor people. And so um, I was a delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2016 to the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. I decided to support him personally, and POP, People's Organization for Progress, endorsed him in 2020. And I
Okay.
was also asked to serve as state chairman for the Bernie campaign in New Jersey. And it was late in 19 that I decided if Bernie was going to go to the White House, that we needed another Bernie Sanders in the Senate.
Yeah.
And so I in December.
Okay, so I wanted to hear a little bit more in your perspective. I think a lot of people had gotten to know Cory Booker from the presidential run he had done. What had inspired you to say that Cory Booker was no longer in that same mold, in your opinion, to be able to carry out the duty of New Jersey's U.S. Senator?
The question wasn't whether he could carry out the abilities of a U.S. Senator. The question was, did we have someone as hard in the U.S. Senate? And quite frankly, I have been running basically this for racial and social justice, Medicare for all, doubling the minimum wage, um, free college and universities and trade school, ending student wars to be a progressive agenda. And I don't think that was the agenda of Cory Booker. And why don't I think that? Because Booker ran against Bernie Sanders for the presidential nomination.
Yeah.
And, one example is, although Booker in the past had said, when he was asked that question on the debates in favor of abolishing private health care, he did not raise his hand. The only two people that raised their hand, I believe, was Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So we need someone in the U.S. Senate who's not going to flip flop, who's not going to, with whatever way the wind blows. We need one to be consistent. Look at his record over of activism. I have been consistent. Another example is more recently, the senator put in a bill related to police brutality. And of course, I support when it comes to police brutality. My mother always taught me it's better to light a candle, but quite too little too late. Anything about police brutality. I mean, you can check the record, and I challenge anyone to check that record. When the federal government came in, the Department of Justice came in to investigate the Newark Police Department, he actually opposed the investigation and initially opposed the consent decree. He came around to support it after to stop it. And this is essentially Mr. Booker's changes essentially with the wind. He never said anything about police brutality, but now that police brutality is on the front page of newspapers across the country, now he's against police brutality. But he wasn't against it when we had some of the most horrific in Newark. On my history as one who has fought for civil people for almost change with the wind. I will not sell people out the way the wind blows. I'm going to go in there on the platform that we've been running on, and I'm going to fight for those things. I'm not going to sell out my principles, and I'm not going to sell out my constituents.
Yeah, I do think that is one of the biggest problems, frankly, that I saw too, is Cory Booker is not particularly, consistent in his record. I think, one of the biggest ones for me is his positions on healthcare, as you brought up beforehand. Frankly, I think that there are proposals that kind of meet that middle ground. I do think of the largely abolishing all of healthcare in most parts of the industry is largely makes common sense. But him opposing the importation of drugs was a big thing for me. It makes no sense, even in a competitive market. Why would you not want to help lower drug costs? That's a big issue for not just the elderly, but all Americans. And then when you bring up the whole criminal justice thing, right. Yeah, it's definitely a seizing on the moment rather than championing it just when it's not being brought to the national attention. It's the people like yourself and other organizers who have been saying this for a very long time, just to deaf ears. So I wanted to hear, in your opinion, you get to have this race go your way. People come out for you on July 7th, as well as in the mail-in votes. What are some of those top priorities you want to make sure, like you in your first 100 days, are prioritizing trying to get accomplished? Yeah, we're having a little bit of a connectivity thing there, so I can repeat
Right.
that, Lawrence, if you need.
Right.
So the question was, there's an effort of prioritization. You clearly have a lot of issues that you want to be able to champion. What would you say are those like top three that you want to prioritize immediately if
Right.
you are able to win your race?
It's 2 issue track. It's going to be a long-term fight to get it. My hope we win back the House, that we flip the Senate, and that we win the White House.
Hmm.
If we get the grand slam, much all the way for Medicare to fight for it. The second issue I'm going to deal with is the issue of police brutality.
Okay.
We must change those laws that give the police more protection from prosecution than average citizens have. When the police understand that when they break the law, they will receive the same punishment as civilians, then I think we'll stem the tide of police brutality in the United States. So, Medicare for all and stopping police brutality.
Okay. So those two, I think, are big issues that, frankly, have to do with kind of life and death. I think those are really important issues as we've been seeing. How do you
Right.
think we can best accomplish this? Even in the Grand Slam scenario, let's take, for example, Medicare for All. As you admitted, Cory Booker is not there yet on Medicare for All. He might have been a co-sponsor, but then when he ran for the presidency, that was something that he did not want to support. How do you take, frankly, as much as we can maybe win the Senate, how do we actually get it across the finish line when we need roughly, if we get you, it'll only be 45 more people who support Medicare for all? How do we start fighting for those policies most strategically to accomplish it? Because we're not going to have every single seat get flipped to a progressive, even in the Democratic Party. So what do you think we need to do to start making that fight more of a reality, especially if Joe Biden is the president too?
Well, let me say what my position has always been. Greatest weapon that we have to realize our progressive agenda is organize and mobilize people in the streets. I believe that whether or not I'm elected, we will need a mass movement as much as. So which I think we will. I think it will be easier. It won't be a cakewalk. Easy that will push the Congress to do the right thing and begin our long walk to justice for Medicare for all. We believe in phasing it in. It's not going to be done all at one time. I think it's going to be in demographic groups of 10 years, say for India, and then 40 to 50, and so on and so forth, and ultimately have every in the Medicare system. As we write the legislation and put through the legislation introduced and into committees, we're still going to need people in the streets demanding this.
Mm. So I wanted to
Congress. Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask you, where you were coming from beforehand, which is why you're in a car, which is a little bit why we have this connectivity problem at the exact moment, is, you were at a vigil, right? You were at a protest. And I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, because you think that's one of the ways
Yes.
we're going to be able to accomplish Medicare for all. What do you think needs to be taken as lessons from these organizing efforts to most effectively go out into the streets and organize from the outside? How can we best mobilize the movement, in your opinion?
Well, I think we can best mobilize. The first effort we must do is mobilize people to the already in March 8th is to put together strategy and tactics that will keep this movement alive for the year that it will take to convict the officer that killed Floyd and get him into jail. So people have to understand that this is a long-term struggle. And
Hmm.
in the same way, we have to mobilize people in the streets have mass rallies at the local level and state level. I think, quite frankly, that that's the next greatest thing we can do. The great accomplishments of the 1960s were things like the passage of the Civil Rights Act, the passage of the Voting Rights Act, and the introduction of Medicare, quite frankly, which at the time that it was conceived was actually conceived by its authors to be the beginning of a universal health care program in the United States. They had enough strength to get it introduced and to cover senior citizens, but they haven't had enough strength to actually broaden it so that it covers everyone. So we have to mobilize people in the streets, just like we have around the issue of police brutality, around issues of economic justice, like Medicare for all, and like jobs at a living wage.
So I'm curious to hear, in your opinion, we have two sides of the coin. There's inside organizing and there's outside organizing. We just covered how we can better outside organize, but we have a couple of progressives already in the Senate as well as in the House. How do you think we could be better organizing with our politicians to get change accomplished? What do you think the Progressive Caucus needs to be doing a little bit better to be able to potentially win more seats or win more support on their issues?
That we have more progressives in the House than we have to get a Democratic majority. I still think it's going to be a fight. It might not be as difficult to fight as it was under Republican majority, but Democrats are just as subject to the pressure of the healthcare industry as Republicans are, and some Democrats have in fact been uh, ongoing recipients of campaign donations from the healthcare industry and
Hmm.
healthcare companies. So we're going to have to build the coalition in the House and in the Senate to in fact get people to sign on as co-sponsors of the Medicare for All. Now I don't know if it's going to be Bernie Sanders' bill, current bill, or a new bill, or someone else's bill, but there will be a bill in 2021 after this Congress is sworn in. So people are going to not only have to demonstrate, that we're going to have to get a national effort going for people to go and meet with their senators,
Mm.
meet with their congresspeople, have one-on-one meetings or small group meetings, and also have town hall meetings. I have actually seen um, congresspeople's position change on issues after they've attended a somewhat lively town hall meeting, to put it mildly.
Yeah, facing
So
the
we're going to
people can
need
do
those
that.
town halls. Yes, yes.
Okay, so yes, we do have to put more pressure onto the Democratic Party to actually be showing up for the people and just frankly listening to them. I think that's a big
That's right.
goal in general. So, the last question that I personally have before I ask one question from my audience that I think is particularly good is, in your
Right.
opinion, where do you think that the frankly progressive coalition needs to be going in terms of, beyond just this, how do we call it, this Democratic Party? Like, we have this kind of divide right now where we feel like we're stuck in this two-party system. We didn't get
Mhm.
Bernie Sanders to be the nominee, nor many another progressive. We have Joe Biden currently. How do you think we best give more representation to the people? Do you think that it comes from within the Democratic Party and taking over the Democratic Party and reforming it? Or do you think that is just trying to get some reforms done there so that we can have a multi-party system?
Well, legally, we have a duopoly. That is, we have a two-party system because the two parties have colluded over the years to make it that way. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, they have changed laws at local levels, at municipal, county levels, at state levels and federal levels election laws that favor the Democrats and Republicans. And although these laws don't specifically speak against third parties, they operate in such a way as to create a dynamic that makes it almost impossible for third parties to win against the the duopoly that
Yeah.
party system in our country, like the both and in trying to organize, and there is names are literally millions of people support the platform the was running on. First of all, there are a lot want to support either party. There are a lot of young people, so we must work on the out to get people registered, Republicans, get them registered. Need an inside and outside.
Yeah, I do think we need that balance as well as some potential general democratic reforms. Let me ask you one final question before I ask how people can be able to support you if they enjoyed hearing you today. This comes from Nelson Orta, a contributor here at the Hill of Roses. He asked, should Joe Biden be elected as president? Where do you think you could find common ground with him on passing legislation?
What's the question?
The question is, should Joe Biden become elected as president, where do you think you could find common ground with him to pass legislation?
Going to he's going to receive the party nomination in August, but I believe the party platform is going to be um, then the plan is to suspend his campaign was that there would be these task and Biden force on different planks in Sanders' platform.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the work of these task force will be reflected in the Democratic Party platform and many people to support Biden. And then I implement issues to law.
Okay, so we're going to have it come through the platform. I do hope that they do try to carry out that platform. Sometimes I worry it's just a piece of paper. But if it is that, then we do have a lot more ground to be able to compromise with him potentially. So Nelson, thank you for that question, and Lawrence, thank you for that answer of bringing out the form of concessions that we were able to achieve still through that national election process. So I wanted to ask you if people enjoyed hearing you today or want to just be able to find more about what your beliefs are and what your campaign is about, where can they go to either get involved or learn more about you?
Go to www. HammForsenate.org, HammForSenate.org. You can make a donation here, and you can learn more about my campaign and my candidacy. Hello? You froze, or I froze. Thank you very much. Take care.
Okay, I'm back. We had bad connectivity for this. I'm really sorry for the viewers out there. Uh, we're going to be working on that going forward with our guests, but we are appreciative that Lawrence still took the time today to try and talk to us. I do think, frankly, when you get to see the platform and his record, you will be much more impressed than you were during this just because of the connectivity. He is a very good leader that I think deserves more attention for New Jersey as a whole. I appreciate you all taking the time. And just in case you did not hear me, here's our guest for this upcoming week. We got Dan Whitfield, who will be coming on tomorrow from Arkansas. Then we will be having Noelle Famara, who you had heard at our 21st Century People-Powered Government event. She'll be coming on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we will be talking with a very special guest, the mother of love, the Orb Queen, Marianne Williamson. So we're really looking forward to that. And so we have a lot to come here. We got a big announcement coming tomorrow morning that I think you all are going to really love. And you're going to see that we're potentially going to be doing some time shifts here at the program. So I look forward to seeing you all in the future. The next few episodes are going to be coming out at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, as always. So I will see you back here then. And until